Okay, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, including the people who are giving this presentation all over the world today. It's great to have you with us. My name is Joshua. I'm the director and founder of El Terreno Cultural Exchange Center here in the Ecuadorian Andes. Today we've got a very special final internship presentation from a variety of our interns who have been with us over the last few months, who have been instrumental in taking our initiatives to solve the water crisis that we've been facing here in Ecuador. Last year we faced the biggest drought Ecuador's seen in the last 60 years and lots of issues around water security. So it kind of just highlighted even further the importance of reforesting certain areas and also working alongside local farmers to improve water security, but also to look, there's a huge wave of migration due to the low amount of income that farmers get. And so Molly, as you'll see in her presentation, along with Carlotta, have been working on how they can optimize the sprinkler systems which are going in alongside the prefectura, so the government organization that's installing and improving local irrigation systems. So this is a kind of a final presentation which is holistic, looking at all of the issues that local people here face and how the interns here have been helping to solve those problems. So I'm going to pass it over now to Molly, Katrina, Carlotta, and the team to present their findings. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Joshua, for the introduction. Let me share my screen with you all, and we can begin. Okay, if everyone could just give me like a thumbs up or a head nod if they can see the screen. No?
Good.
Yeah. All good. Okay. All right. So again, thank you for the introduction, Joshua, and I want to say thank you to everyone for attending. It means a lot to be able to share what we've been doing. So like Joshua said, we're a group of interns from, I guess, all stages of this project working on this reforestation project, aiming to increase water security and increase farming outputs for the local community here. And today, unfortunately, not everyone who's involved in this project could be here because it's been such a long-going project, but we are lucky to have the three of us presenting on it, and then some of the other people in the Zoom got to work on it before we came. So yeah, to introduce myself, like I said, I am Molly. I'm from the United States. I'm an environmental engineer, and I've been here in Altadawa now for 2 months working on this project. And I've had so much time to learn and so many cool people to meet. So
Hello everyone, as I said before, I'm Carlotta from Italy. I'm a mechanical engineer and I work for a company in the water sector, so this is why I choose this volunteer program. I spent 1 month in Atandawa and my experience was really amazing because it was amazing to work with this community and help them.
Hi everyone, my name is Kat and I'm from Australia. I was in Atandawa in Ecuador for a month as well, working over two projects, one of them being the reforestation project, which we are talking about today. And before that, I was helping to build a school garden in the community school, and overall had an amazing experience as well. And with that, so just very quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. Hopefully it's not going to be over 45 minutes to an hour. We'll just talk a little bit about the community and some background information about why we're doing what we're doing. Then I guess the different stages of the projects include native tree classifications. We visited the Ojos de Aguas, which mean eye of the water in English. Then Carlotta also did some community mapping, and I think Molly's going to talk to sprinkler system design, some fundraising, and then some maximizing profitability as well. And then with the conclusion, we'd like to hear any questions you might have. So with that, I might just kick off with some of the background information around Atandawa and the neighboring communities. I think everyone on the call hopefully has a little bit of flavor of what's the characteristics of Atandawa, but just a little bit of introduction. It's located in the Andean region of Ecuador, so it's quite high up, over 3,000 meters. So it is quite a unique climate region. It is, in terms of population, highly indigenous, who speak, the local language, which is Quechua, as well as some Spanish. And I guess, that's kind of like the main population here. Their primary economic activity in this region, as you can imagine, because it's located in the Andean region, is mostly from farming and agriculture, and so that's their primary income source. A lot of the kids who go to school also, do a lot of agriculture, both at home and also just helping out their parents. However, due to some of these characteristics, the challenges that they face, which Joshua has already spoken to early in the call, is they had some severe water shortages during the dry season. And as Joshua mentioned, it does lead to electricity shortages because Ecuador relies on hydroelectric dams to produce electricity. And also, as a result of these, low economic opportunities, there's been a lot of migration outside of the region and into other countries. So I guess that's the backdrop of why the reforestation project is quite important, to help save the water source and then retain more agricultural opportunities as well. And moving on to the next slide, we're going to touch on the first part of this project. So initially we started working on classifying and understanding the different native tree species which are in the Andean region. There's a variety of native trees in the Andean region, and I guess the purpose of this little exercise is just to understand sort of their characteristics and be able to name the trees and know what they're good for, so then we can help plant them in better locations and making sure we're capturing all of the benefits of these trees. So on this page, we've got examples of some of the native trees that we catalogued. And these are some of the ones that we will talk to later on in the presentation in terms of the trees that we actually planted as well. And on to the next slide, we basically started the exercise with Gus, one of our interns, who just put together the Excel doc. And you can see in the doc, we kind of gathered data on growing speed, how fast it grows. Typically with native trees, some of them can be quite slow growing. So we factor that into our planting schedule. The height of the tree, how tall does it get, and also the growing altitude. Importantly to mention, each of these trees have different characteristics. A lot of them, the ones that we planted around the Ojo de Agua, are the ones which are very good cloud catchers. And what it means is that these trees kind of grow into large canopy, and so they are quite good at catching water in the atmosphere, and therefore retaining a lot of that water into the tree trunk and then into the ground. So they're quite good at retaining water. Some of them have very good biomass, which means, the leaves and the fallings of the trees go back into the ground and provides really good nutrients into the ground. And then I guess some of the trees are also quite good for animals and for biodiversity, attracting different types of species of animals. So each of these native trees are good for different things. And from this sort of research doc onto the next page, we kind of wanted to sort of spread the good word and make sure that people, more of this knowledge can be passed on to different people. And so we put together a little brochure, which we can then distribute to different groups of communities. But essentially just summarizing what I've just described, and then on one page, very easy identification of different types of native trees, and with a picture so you can actually identify what they are and understand their characteristics. So that's kind of like stage one of the project, and then we moved on to visiting some of the Ojos de Agua. Essentially, the idea is, if we go to the next page, before we actually plant any trees, we tend to go to the location where we've identified a water source, just to understand the landscape and be able to plan where we want to plant the trees, and also understand, what sort of materials and how many trees we need to bring to the location. So over here is sort of the principle we used when we were planning these plants. Essentially, in the middle, you can see the water source, the ojo de agua. I guess the backdrop is a lot of the ojo de agua are shrinking in size because of the reducing amount of water that gets captured. And so in this part, what we want to do is protect it by planting trees around it to make sure that it is actually the water is being retained in this water source. Some of the principles that we applied is making sure that the trees are planted with enough distance so then they can grow tall and healthy. The different types of trees that get planted as well. So it's not just one type of native tree. We tend to put a variety in the same area, so it gets a lot of biodiversity benefits. We do also put some barbed wire fences around the trees, more from the perspective of protecting the water source from animals, cows, from entering and potentially contaminating the water source. And then on sort of both sides of the property, planting two rows of trees to make sure, the land captures more of the water as well. And with that, I might pass on to Carlotta to talk through some of the work we've actually done.
Thank you, Kat. Hello, everyone, again. Okay, I don't see okay, maybe it's only my problem. Do you see the screen? Okay, it's only my problem. No problem. So for the first part of my project, the first thing we did was map the Atandawa community using Google Earth. In fact, thanks to Junta de Riego, we received a list of 25 people designated to receive native trees. And to geolocate the land of these 25 people, we organized a meeting with the community, and 17 out of 25 people attended the meeting. So we decided that they would have priority in receiving and planting the trees. Thanks to Google Earth, as you can see in the photo, we mapped the perimeters of their land, and it was really important because thanks to this, we calculating how many trees to donate for each person. This was important because we had a limited number of trees by donation. So the goal was to optimize the distribution for the entire community. On the next slide, you can see a table representing all the tree species. Yes, this table, and because at the same time we counted and divided all the donated trees by species. In total, there were 1,148 trees, and from these we calculated the percentages that helped us to assign tree types to each person. So far, out of these 1,148 trees, at the end of my internship, we have successfully planted 1,000 trees in 4 weeks, and this is only for the water project in Atandawa, so without including Ojos de Agua. And this is really an important number, I think. Then in the next slide, there are two different tables. The first table lists the name of the first, in the next one. Okay, yes, the first table lists the name of the 17 people who attended the meeting and whose land data we have on Google Earth. To calculate how many trees to provide per person, we considered planting 1 tree every 6 meters. So by dividing the land perimeters by 6 meters, we have the number of trees for each person. For example, in the first column, we have the name of these 17 people. In the second column, we have the sector of which their land are, and we have three sectors for Atandawa that are Atandawa Alto, Atandawa Bajo, and Mirador. Then we have the perimeters and the number of trees. For example, for Joshua Holmes, we have that he has a perimeter of 1,154 meters, and he needs for this land 192 trees. The second table shows the distribution of tree species per person. For example, for Joshua, we have 192 trees, including 32 Nogal, 54 Aliso, 10 Guaranjo, and so on. And we did this job for all the 17 people who attended the meeting. So we planted all of these trees. In the next slide, I included three different pictures of my period in Natandawa. The first one was taken on my first day in Atandawa when we counted and divided all the 1,000 trees with Molly and Kat, and it was really a long job. The second one was taken with Hugo Vascones, that is one of the 25 users, and I am with Molly, Nathan, and Noah. There are other two volunteers, and we helped Hugo to planting like 300 trees in 2 hours. And the next one is a typical photo, is an example of when we subdivided all the trees for the users. So this was only the first part of the project. And in the next slide, there is the second part of the project that was about the sprinkler system to be installed on this land for the irrigation. This part was also critical because it's important to use water in the best efficiency way during the dry season. In fact, for this part of the project, we had a maximum number of sprinklers that each user is reserved to receive, and the maximum number depends on the flow that comes from in the pipeline. So our goal was to find the right balance between using the fewest sprinklers while maximizing coverage. The first layout that we did was for Joshua lands. And what we did, we went to his land with Molly and our tutor, Christian, and we measured the perimeter on site using a measuring tape. Then we input this perimeter on AutoCAD, and we drew this layout. The result for Joshua is that he needs for his land 20 sprinklers, and this is the best layout to have the best efficiency in terms of soil irrigation. The blue and the green circles represent the area that the sprinklers covers, and the blue one are the sprinklers positioned in the same distances, is like 16 meters, while the green one are the other that are in different distances, like for example 13, 14, or 12, and it depends from the coverage that they need to have in the lands. After this, we went to the land, and thanks to the 3-4-5 Pythagorean method, we put it on the ground the references that were like small pieces of wood. And this was important because we trust the perpendicular line in which the future sprinklers will be installed. So for this project, the next step will be finish the layout of the 25 users, and then with the Minga and other workers will dig the ground and install the real sprinklers. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carlotta and Kat. As you guys can see, we've accomplished a lot in the time we've been here, and we're still working now to continue to reforest Atandawa. However, this is not a cheap undertaking. We need money to pay for transportation, resources, time from local exports, mentors, and the way for us to pay for this is donations. So to fund this, we created a fundraising page, and this is a lovely photo of my face, but this is a video from the fundraising. Unfortunately, I'm not going to play it because I think with Zoom it's a little slow, but we'll send in a link of the page in the chat so you guys can check it out. And please, please, if you can, please donate. It means a lot. And again, a huge thank you to the people that have already donated. You've helped us be able to do everything that we've said so far, so that has been awesome. In terms of the breakdown of it, it's broken down into 3 separate tiers, the first being the essential, the second being the ideal, and the third being the stretch goal. So I'm happy to say at this point we've already raised 942 pounds, which is around $1,200, which means we have surpassed our essential goal, which is awesome. Again, thank you to everyone that made this happen. But again, we're still reaching towards our ideal and stretch goals. So if you have the means to donate, please, please, we really appreciate it. All right, so then moving on into the next step of the project, we've been talking a lot about reforestation and maximizing water security with this reforestation. But that brings us to the question is if we have this access to water, year-round access to water, when should farmers be planting each crop to sell during the most profitable month of the year, and in turn maximize their profits? So this question was kind of the central focus of my project that I've been working on for the past month after Kat and Carlotta left, sadly. But to do this, I think my thought was the best way to answer this question is to speak with the experts on this topic, which is going to be the local farmers here in Atandawa. So I interviewed 3 farmers. Here you can see Luis, who Luis grows on Joshua's land here and then land around the area, and then Walter and Enrique, who are also local farmers in the Atandawa area. And in these interviews, the things I wanted to find were mainly what types of crops were grown in Atandawa, what the yearly or the annual growing cycles were, like when they plant, when they harvest, fertilization, weeding, other phases of the cultivation cycle, the cost of each crop and how that changes per month, and then also any suggestions that the farmers might have for planting the irrigation system and what they hope to plant on the irrigation system as well. So after these interviews with the 3 farmers, I identified some of the most common crops in Atandawa, which are listed here. Most of them are grown close to here. Some of them, like fresas, require a little bit different different soil composition, or not composition, but different factors, I guess, to grow, as well as cebolla. But these are mostly the crops grown in the area. And so after finding out these crops, looking into it and talking with the farmers and Sebastian, my other mentor, not all of the crops are suitable to be planted in an area with irrigation. So we had to look at kind of the growing systems, the soil requirements, water requirements, other factors that influence the growing cycle, and narrow down which crops made sense to be planted in the area of irrigation and which crops did not. And so here on the left of the screen, you can see which crops I propose are a good fit to be grown in irrigation. With that, it's important to point out that maize, corn, is usually grown in what is called the Three Sisters system, and this is growing it with frijol and calabaza, which frijol is beans and calabaza is pumpkins. And these 3 crops together provide benefits in the soil for each other, so they grow really well in the same plot of land. So in the future, when I mention maize, it's usually grown with this Three Sister system. And then also to note cebolla, which is onion. The farmers during our conversations, they suggested growing onion with a small plot of vegetables alongside, because onion and vegetables, they offer a lot of soil benefits in the same way as the Three Sister system. And these vegetables can also be another either point of income or personal consumption for the farmers. So that is something to note as well. And then Moving on to the left side, which are the crops that I don't suggest growing in the irrigation system. And this is going to be trigo, cebada, and chocho. These three crops, they rely heavily on both the rainy and the dry season, so year-round access to water wouldn't be the best for their annual cycle. They're also tend to be a little less expensive of a crop, meaning less outputs for the farmer, or less income for the farmer, sorry. So those I decided didn't make sense to be grown in the irrigation system, as well as fresas, which do require irrigation, but they require drip irrigation. And the kind of irrigation system we are implementing is a sprinkler system. So fresas were left out of the consideration as well. So with that, once I decided which crops I thought were the best to grow in the irrigation system, I had to look a little more in depth about the annual growing systems of each of these crops, or the annual growing cycle, sorry, of each of these crops and the prices throughout the year. So you can see here is an example of habas. Habas are fava beans, also in English. And generally they're grown in, or they're planted in December and then to be harvested in April. However, you can see that in April to July, the cost for fava beans is much lower, meaning that farmers get less revenue from this. And the cost in April to July are usually higher because this is when most of the people are producing, most of the farmers in the area are producing fava beans. So prices drop, demand drops, and farmers aren't farmers aren't selling as much. But right now without access to irrigation, this is one of the only options because they need access to rainwater. But you can see that in November to March, the prices for fava beans are much higher, much better. So looking at that, and with access to irrigation water throughout the whole year, we can switch which month we plant the crops in so that we can harvest in the more profitable months. So for an example with habas, I suggest planting in September to be harvested in March and sold from March to April, where the prices are much better for fava beans. And this is also important to note that there is two different kinds of fava beans. There's the dry, or two different phases of fava beans is more correct. There's the dry fava beans and the tender fava beans. And you can see the best growing price for the tender is in March. But if you were to harvest in March, you sell the tender in March and you're able to store the dry fava beans until the best sale in December. So again, this is what the irrigation system may allow us to do for farmers with their crops, and a similar analysis to this, what I did with the fava beans, was done for all of the crops that we looked at earlier. And so after this analysis of when the best time to plant to sell is, I was able to do some more economical calculations. And as you can see, here's the usual selling month when the prices are lowest. And if we're able to change that to the new selling month with this access to irrigation and sell in the month with higher prices, you can see the percent increase for each of these crops. And you can see the highest increases are in fava beans, habas, arvejas, which is peas, and papas, which is potatoes. And it almost, for these plants, you can almost double your income for harvest. So that's something that we can present to farmers in order to help convince them that this is something they should possibly do. So with that, putting all that into one sheet is I proposed a calendar for the irrigation system, a planting calendar. And this includes the best times when they should plant each crop, when they should harvest each crop, and when they should sell each crop. And this is a very simplified version of a planting calendar. And the long-term goal is to be able to present this to farmers as a kind of guideline to follow when they should plant their irrigation system, or when they should plant the crops in their irrigation system. However, there is a however always, but I am not a farmer, and I have done, with the information I have gathered from the farmers, I've done my best to try and come up with the solution, but I do recognize that one, it is very risky to ask farmers to change their farming practices so significantly, even with the access to irrigation. And also these estimations that I made are very reliant on prices and rain, and these vary significantly through the year, whether it's a drier year, a rainier year, an El Nino, La Nina, and then also prices change drastically every year just based on production in other communities, so it's not exactly reliable. So I'm hesitant to be able to say, do this right now and end the project. So for this, in conversations with my mentors and the other farmers, I suggest a kind of pilot project. And this pilot project, thank you to Joshua and Luis, is going to happen here at El Terreno, on Joshua's land. And this irrigation area pilot project, here you can see Joshua's plot of land. This is Joshua's irrigated land that we saw the sprinklers on earlier. It's about 3,200 square meters. And the proposal I have come up with is to divide this area into 6 sections and then plant the crops we've talked about in a 4-year crop rotation cycle. So this means that each section will be planted every season with a new crop, and it'll be rotated every season until the end of the 4 years. And throughout this period of 4 years, the idea is that it's an experimental period for Joshua and Luis, the farmer who plants on Joshua's lands, to look at what plants do grow well under the irrigation system, any challenges that arise, also for them to kind of measure the income increases or decreases, hopefully not decreases, but any changes within these 4 years they can see. And here's a little bit more of a breakdown of how this would look. Here you can see it's broken into each of the 6 sections, like what is planted in the first year. You can see Avena, papas, alfalfa, habas, cebolla, and arveja are going to be planted in the first year, and then they will every subsequent year after that will follow this same rotation cycle. 5 of the sections follow this rotation cycle. However, section 3 will be a little different. This section will plant alfalfa, and alfalfa is a pasture crop, and it can be seeded once, planted once, and then it can be harvested and grown in the same plot for about 4 years before the soil needs to turn over. So this one will stay consistent throughout the 4 years, and then at the end of the 4 years, it can be overturned and put back in the cycle. Again, here in the top corner, you can see kind of how the layout will look for the first year. These are the plants that will be planted. And then following the schedule, this is what year 2 will look like with each plant in each section, and so on for the next 4 years. And the goal at the end of the 4 years, based on the calculations I did previously, the ideal income increase that Joshua should see should be about $7,000. But again, the point of this period is to be able to see if we're able to reach that, come close to it, and what some of the problems might be. So yeah, that's the purpose of this experimental period. However, there are some other considerations to think about before we introduce this. One of the considerations is, in conversations with my mentor again and other farmers, they suggested planting the perimeter of each irrigation system with fruit trees. So fruit trees they take a lot of water, but like we did with the other farmers in Atandawa, we planted more native trees around the outside of their land, but trees in general just provide a lot of soil benefits and also protection for the crop fields. So fruit trees generally require a lot of water and are rarely planted in here because of that. But if we're able to plant fruit trees around the perimeter, it kind of capitalizes on this water availability and also can serve as either more income for farmers or personal consumption, as well as give the soil benefits to that crop field. Another concern brought up by the farmers is the fixed nature of this sprinkler system. Again, these are sprinkler systems going in the ground. They're not movable. But some of the farmers are concerned that this introduces complications with their normal crop rotations. So they wanted to kind of explore options of maybe how this might be able to be movable, but that's more of a consideration for the engineers putting this in, but it is something that the farmers did bring up. And another concern less of a concern, but conversation we had with the farmers is that for the most part, they're all very open to growing new crops and following this new cycle, but their main concern is not knowing how to, not being familiar with these crops. So they exhibited interest in maybe getting instructional manuals or workshops or bringing in mentors to help teach them and teach the local people about how to best to grow these crops so that they feel a little more confident doing something like this. So those are our future considerations. And then moving into the final stages of the project, this morning I got to present to some of the key stakeholders, which are the engineer in charge of implementing the irrigation system, and then the president of the Junta de Agua, which the Junta de Agua is the body, the basically group here that manages the water sources that sorry, it's the body that manages the water access to Atandawa. So I got to present to them and hear their recommendations and thoughts, and they were receptive to the project, which was awesome to hear. And they expressed interest in maybe bringing this to the Prefectura, which is the bigger governing body of the area, and they were hoping that they can bring this more to the community and hopefully continue the project in the coming years, which unfortunately, as my time comes to an end, it probably won't be me, but hopefully for future interns to be able to continue this project along. So that brings us to my conclusion. Again, I'm at the end of my time here, which is sad to say, but I've got to learn a lot. I've got to be a part of a really awesome project. And met so many people. This is a photo of, I think, the only photo I could find of all of us in it at once. So yeah, I would love to see how this continues. And again, thank you guys for all your attention. And again, thank you for doing the donations. And just a reminder, if you haven't donated, we really appreciate to be able to continue this project. So thank you all.
Well then, guys, massive round of applause. Amazing. It's amazing with hard work, dedication, focus, what you can achieve in relatively a very short amount of time. Less than 3 months to from everything that was done there. So we're gonna go over and open the space for some questions and answers in a minute. I just wanted to highlight one thing in case people who are watching this for the first time aren't entirely sure that this is all of this work is connected, right? So where they've been reforesting the trees is going to improve the water security, which goes directly into the irrigation system that Carlotta and Molly were discussing. So the increase in water is going to mean more water for the farmers throughout the year, especially through the dry season, so they can continue to grow. So this is a really holistic project, and it's also a lot thanks to Matthew, who's also on the call, who was helping to identify where these water sources are. He was with us last summer. So also a massive thank you to you, Matthew, for helping getting this project going. So if you've got any questions, you can raise your hand. You can do as Sebastian's done and put questions in the chat. I'm gonna have I'd like to hear from everyone again with my first question for each one of you, Katrina, Carlotta, and Molly. What was the biggest challenge that you guys each faced during your time here? Because I know it hasn't always run smoothly. And how did you overcome it?
Maybe I'll kick off. Biggest challenge for me was probably my inability to communicate in Spanish well and communicate with farmers. And I guess I didn't fully overcome it, but I think towards the end, I took some lessons, so my Spanish actually got a little bit better, but also just, learning to communicate regardless of how good there's always a way to communicate. Either through other people or just through really simple words. I think the second thing is also just the challenge was around the resources. Obviously, in the location we were in, we're very limited by what we have, and so I guess part of this is getting outside in funding and other resources to help us do the project, which we otherwise wouldn't be able to do without the help of the outside world.
For me, my biggest challenge was the language, the Spanish, the English also. The altitude, because in the first day we were planting trees under the rain in a very altitude place, and that I have a little time to develop all of this project because I stay only 1 month, but the first week it was the ambientation week. I don't know if it's correct to say, but in 1 month yeah, we did everything. So I'm happy to this.
I think for me, the language is is a barrier that is hard. As well, I do feel like working here has taught a lot of patience and flexibility because the nature of this project is things don't all don't usually work out the way you think they're gonna work out. So it's a lot of kind of adapting on the fly, and if you think someone's gonna show up, they might not. So it was just a lot of kind of getting used to that uncertainty, but yeah, it was good.
Great, yeah, and I think that last point is really important because you'd potentially planned of designing the sprinkler system for all of the users who'd come to collect the trees, and then the contractor wasn't around suddenly for 3 weeks, and you had to adapt all of your plans and what you were going to do. So I think you all did a really good job at being flexible in that sense, because it can sometimes be pretty frustrating. But you've done really well to adapt and come out with something which I think has really put us in a great position to take things forward and to spread things out. So well done. Okay, 4 questions from Sebastian. I will direct this first one to Carlotta. What are all the benefits of planting trees on the farms and near water sources? What do we want to achieve long term?
So the benefits, yeah, I have the microphone on. The benefits on planting trees on farms and near water sources is that with these trees, they can transform, condense in water, and I think that in dry season this is important because in Atandawa in Ecuador there is no a lot of water, so it's important to keep the ground irrigated all the time. So I think this is the first thing. And what do we want to achieve in the long term is to reforestated all the territory. So for have water in the ground, water for the people in the community, because they have a lot of problem with water, not only in the dry season, but also in the wet season, because they have the most of electricity from hydroelectric. So if there is no water, there is no power. And I think this is the most important thing.
Thank you. Okay, Katrina, next one's for you. According to the studies conducted in the summer of 2024, which is from Matthew and David, the area needs approximately 68,000 trees. This year, approximately 6,000 trees were obtained and have already been planted in coordination with local farmers' organizations. This figure still requires implementation in the coming years with all the logistics involved. What creative solutions do you propose to continue protecting and restoring water sources?
Great question, Sebas. I think from a logistical perspective, we were probably challenged by the number of tree available to plant, and also B, just the manpower and resources and time to be able to plant all of them at once. It's not very creative, but I suppose to overcome that, I think we're talking about potentially having our own nursery on Josh's land or even somewhere else in the local community where we can potentially, be able to plant more seedlings to distribute. And then from that sort of resourcing perspective, not very creative, but I think a lot of the time was spent, basically just walking around with seedlings and the equipment, which obviously takes a very long time. So involving more local communities, which hopefully with the results of the last couple of years plantings, more people will see the benefits of it and want to participate. We can get more manpower, and then also hopefully get some more resources to help us do things with less manual labor and do things faster, more efficiently. That's not very creative, but it is a solution.
Thank you. And it makes me think about something that Sebastian and I have been talking about, like long term. How would it be if we could have our own plant nursery with these seedlings that you're mentioning, especially some of the plants that we don't even know what the names of? Because when you get the plants from the local plant nurseries, it's quite, we've still planted about 15 or 20 different varieties, but it's still relatively limited compared to a native ecosystem. So actually being able to go maybe with a biologist and being able to harvest and replant and transplant some of these rarer, more exotic species and identify what they are could also be an interesting solution, I think would be great. Before we go on to another question, Molly, Matthew, I can see you put a question in. I'd love to, I can read it out if you like, but if you'd be willing to open your microphone and camera, it'd be great to hear directly from you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just I was curious to know how was the day when you planted the tree? How did you organize them? And how many people came and why did some people not come? And yeah, how has it been perceived globally by the population of Atandao?
Whoever would like to respond to that one.
I can take it. The days we planted trees were good. It was a lot of work. I know like Carlotta's first day was we threw out into the field of walking up and down and up and down of planting trees around the Ojos de Agua. But no, the organization was a lot of help from Sebastian, our mentor, who's asking the questions as well. Is a lot of communication with the community of Minga-based work is generally what it's called here. So a Minga is kind of a collaborative group effort to either build something, plant trees, do something all together as a community. So a lot of it was Minga based, where we would come in with our tools and people from the community would come bring their tools and help us plant. Some people didn't show up, some people did. It depended on the day. But I think in general, a lot of the people from the communities recognize the importance of this and are eager to help and also want to help revitalize their land as well. But I do still think there is an attitude, not an attitude, but I just think it's not necessarily common knowledge of how much this needs to happen. So I think that is a challenge in the future of making sure it's a priority and something that people recognize as something that will help them in the future as well. So.
Yeah, good point. And we always try and work with the people who are most engaged, the communities. We work closely with Cochabamba as well. But even so, even though some of the farmers really wanted to get their trees planted, their neighbors didn't. And some of the neighbors went and unfortunately pulled up a couple of the trees, which were then going to be next to their land. So although I think we've done especially Sebastian's done a great amount of work of socializing the issues and the need to reforest, there's still work that needs to be done. I'm going to go on to someone else in a minute. I'm conscious we're running out of time, but Matthew, I wonder how it is for you, having been here last summer, to see how your research has now been put into action in implementing reforesting.
Well, that's great. That's great to see. It's great to see what we can achieve in a very small amount of time. Uh, yeah, I know as well that there is still a lot to do. Like as Sebastian said, we need 60,000 trees, but it's just the fact to have started is such a big step forward, and I hope that it will be that it will still go like that. And I had another question as well, a very quick question, but what are the results you would like to see during the pilot phase in your land, Joshua, in 4 years? What kind of outcome you would like to see?
I mean, I'm really excited about the potential of being able to use El Terreno as a laboratory to be able to
Yeah.
make mistakes, to try things out, make mistakes, and use that learning to then be able to share that with local people and be able to demonstrate what can work, what doesn't work, so that we can continue to build that confidence and the trust working with the local communities. Because, as you know, there's a long tradition of farmers planting the same thing every single year, even though the prices that they get almost seems to go down every year, and certainly the cost of chemicals goes up, and obviously the deterioration of the soil and the damage to the soil. So something needs to change. Otherwise, the migration crisis is only going to continue. And so I think this work's really important, but we need to be able to demonstrate it and build the relationships and build the trust with the farmers. So I think it's a really, really valid question. And I think the support of people like Christian and Sebastian, who are Ecuadorians, have been trained up professionally and are able to communicate with local people in a kind of a way from one Ecuadorian to another, is also a really important part of that process. Great. I think we'll probably, unless someone's really got an urgent burning question, I'm very conscious about keeping time for everyone. I think we might leave it there. Is there anyone who has one final question?
Can I say something? I just want to say that congratulations, girls. You have done a very, very amazing job. I'm really proud of you. You have set the bar high now. You've done a lot of things in just a small amount of time. So we are excited with the next things that you have said. We have to keep doing the work. And finally, I just want to know in just few words from each one of you, how is now your perspective? What are you taking from El Terreno experience that you can now implement in your life?
I'll go. And I actually had a picture in my presentation, but one of the fondest memories or new things I discovered in Atlantawa was Pampa Mesa. After a day of hard work, you are rewarded by just community fun and sharing really simple things, but having so much fun doing it. So I guess just that element and sentiment of surrounding yourself with community, that's something I'll take away with me.
The only thing I can say is that for me it was a really amazing experience to be with you. Thank you to Christian, to Joshua, to Sebastian, and also to the girls for your dedication to the project, to the work, and to the community especially. And I will bring forever with me the different type of live the life in that small pieces of world. And because it's really different from my world, from Italy, is more simple, more relaxed, and I learned a lot from the people, from you, from the environment, the international environment, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I guess my biggest change is similar to Kat's. I think being here, we got to interact with so many amazing people, both the staff here, the mentors, the other interns and volunteers, and then the community as well. And it's just it's really kind of amazing to see how much can be put together in a short amount of time and a long amount of time. Like there's so many people that worked on this project. So I guess it's a little bit corny, but I guess like the power of teamwork of Minga is something I really saw in my time here.
Thank you. Beautiful. I think that's a lovely way to end. Thank you, Molly, Carlotta, Katrina, for putting together a fantastic presentation. Of course, Sebastian and Christian for being amazing mentors, and everybody else who could join and participate in this webinar tonight. It's really nice to see all of you with us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will keep you posted. Stay posted with how this continues. We've got some more people hopefully joining us in the summer to continue with this work. It won't be planting trees, but there's lots more work to be done, as you know. So I hope you can continue to join us, and we'll be in touch. All the best. Take care, everyone. Speaking again soon.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.